Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, my dear brothers and sisters. Today's message is not just a lesson, it's a mirror, a warning, a whisper from the unseen world, reaching out to the souls who think they are chosen, guided, or special. If you're watching this, it's not by accident. Because this message is meant to shake something deep inside you. And at the end of this video, I will share a powerful prayer with you. A prayer that could protect the chosen ones from walking into the very trap that has destroyed many before them. There is a silent danger that surrounds those who feel they've been chosen for something greater. Whether it's a role, a mission, a spiritual awakening, or simply a deep connection to the truth, this sense of being different can feel like a fire in the chest. It can motivate. It can inspire. It can lift you when the world rejects you. But here's the secret that no one tells you. This feeling can also become the beginning of your fall. Because once you start to believe you're chosen, your ego doesn't stay asleep. It slowly creeps in, whispering things like, "You're special. You're ahead." They don't understand you. Until one day, you're not listening anymore. You're just speaking. This is where the problem begins. Because the very moment you stop listening to the divine direction and start trusting your own voice more than the one who guides, that's when the mission becomes yours instead of his. That's when you start moving from submission to control. From being a servant to becoming a performer. And many don't even realize they've crossed that line. They still speak in spiritual tones. They still do religious acts. They still cry. They still pray. They still preach. But inside, something has shifted. The purity is gone. The urgency is gone. The sincerity becomes performance. And the words, they become louder than the silence that once connected you to the unseen. Some of the most tragic falls in history didn't start with open rebellion. They started with spiritual pride. People who were gifted, elevated, respected. People who were surrounded by listeners, followers, believers. And then slowly, the soul began to feed on attention instead of remembrance. Their sense of being chosen blinded them from the fact that the one who chooses can also remove that honor in a single breath. Being chosen is not a permanent label. It's a moment of trust. A test of how you carry that trust. A weight, not a crown. But here's what's even more dangerous. When a chosen one makes a mistake, the ripple is bigger. When an average soul falls, maybe a few people are affected. But when a person with influence, leadership, or spiritual status falls, it can affect hundreds of thousands, even generations. And this is exactly what has happened time and time again. History is full of examples of movements that started pure and ended in chaos. Of leaders who began as humble servants and ended as arrogant tyrants. Of teachers who became obsessed with their own image, forgetting the message. And the worst part? They didn't see it coming. Because the moment you think you are immune is the moment you're most exposed. This is not just about leaders on stages or public speakers. This applies to anyone who carries the truth in their heart. Anyone who has been blessed with clarity. Anyone who feels they've been awakened while the world sleeps. You see, the most dangerous illusion for the chosen is this. Believing that being chosen means you're safe. But in reality, it means you're being watched more closely, tested more deeply. And yes, if you fall, the consequences are heavier. That's why this message is urgent. Not to scare you, but to protect you. Because the path is real. The mission is real, but the enemy is also real. And he knows exactly how to twist your strength into your weakness. How to use your desire for impact to lead you into pride. How to make you believe that since you've been chosen, you don't need correction. That your intentions are always pure, that your path is always right, And once that seed is planted, it grows quietly. Until one day, you find yourself surrounded by people who cheer for you, but none who correct you. You're full of followers, but empty of fear. You feel chosen, but you're drifting, and the scariest part? You don't feel it. So today, I ask you to pause, to reflect, to ask yourself the most important question. Is my feeling of being chosen making me softer, more humble, more fearful of my own flaws? Or is it making me louder, more defensive, more certain that I can never be wrong? Because if it's the second, then it's not a blessing, it's a warning. And if you ignore it, that mistake could echo not just through your life, but through the lives of those who trust you, through families, communities, generations, and yes, even decades. They say the weight of a crown is only felt by the one wearing it. But the truth is, some crowns aren't made of gold. They're made of expectations, spiritual responsibility, and silent burdens. When someone starts to realize they are walking a path that few understand, it can create an invisible distance between them and the rest of the world. They begin to see signs others don't. They begin to feel a calling that won't let them sleep. They start noticing how their soul reacts to things differently, and deep inside, something whispers, "You're not like the others." That voice, if handled with humility, can lead to beautiful obedience. But if handled with ego, it can become a slow poison that changes everything. Because being chosen is not about status. It's about responsibility. It's about being called to carry something heavier than most. It's not about standing above others. It's about bowing lower when no one is watching. But the problem starts when this spiritual distinction becomes part of the identity. Suddenly, people are no longer just servants. They start to think they're saviors. They don't just deliver the message, they believe they are the message. And from that moment, the path begins to shift, subtly, quietly, but surely. And that's exactly what's happening to many souls right now. There is a silent rise of individuals who were once connected, soft-hearted, pure in their journey. But over time, their awareness of being different made them isolated. At first, they rejected praise. They felt uncomfortable being called special. But eventually, when the world continued to recognize them, when people began to follow them, when their words started carrying weight, something changed. They started believing it. And once you start believing you're above the test, that's when you're already failing it. The mistake many chosen ones make is thinking that feeling special means being secure. But feeling chosen is not the proof. It's the test. It's not the arrival. It's the door. And at that door, a choice is made. Some step through with humility, constantly checking their heart, questioning their motives, and begging for guidance. Others walk in confidently, thinking they've already been approved, already passed, already won. And those are the ones who fall the hardest. Because when the spotlight hits the soul, the shadows grow longer. What was once a heart full of longing becomes a chest full of pride. What was once about truth becomes about legacy, impact, reputation. And then, they're no longer chasing the light, they're performing it. The real tragedy is that this change rarely looks evil. In fact, from the outside, it may look like growth, more followers, more views, more influence, more praise. But inside, something precious is dying. The stillness, the sincerity, the need to cry out, the trembling before every decision, the fear of misleading even one soul. It all begins to fade, replaced by the applause of the crowd and the illusion that success means divine approval. But that's the trap. Sometimes, the biggest red flag is when everything is going right.
because it makes you stop checking if your heart still is. And this is how decades of spiritual destruction begin. Not with disbelief, not with evil, but with confidence. With the silent shift from surrender to control. With the slow transition from servant to symbol. From seeker to leader to idol. It's happened before, and it's happening again. People who once wept in the night now speak with certainty by day. People who once shook from fear now deliver judgments with no pause. People who once begged for guidance now give advice as if they are the source. And the danger becomes even worse when others believe it too. It becomes a cycle. One chosen soul who makes a mistake, refuses correction, continues speaking, continues gaining followers, and suddenly a new wave is born. A generation grows up watching someone who walks with spiritual pride and thinks that's what guidance looks like. They imitate the tone, the arrogance, the certainty. And over time, what began as a divine gift becomes a cultural symbol, empty, loud, confident, but disconnected. And who's to blame? Not just the crowd, not just the followers, but the original one who was chosen. Because when you are chosen, your fall isn't personal, it's communal. When you make a mistake, it doesn't just ruin your path. It can create hundreds of new wrong ones. That's why this moment matters. Because the next generation is watching how you walk, how you react, how you respond to correction, how you speak, how you stay silent, how you carry your status. They are learning not from your teachings, but from your posture. This is the burden that chosen ones must never forget. Every step you take is louder than every word you say, and if you ignore that weight, the mistake won't just last a moment. It can last decades. It can last lifetimes. The most dangerous mistake a chosen one can make is believing that their mission justifies their actions. When someone starts to think that the ends always justify the means, that they are doing something so important that they can overlook the little slips, the little compromises, the little acts of pride or manipulation, that's when the foundation begins to crack. And it always begins quietly. There are no alarms, no sudden changes, just tiny shifts in intention that grow with time. A decision made to impress rather than to obey. A post written to be seen, not to guide. A reaction fueled by ego, not purpose. But these moments pile up, silently building a version of the self that becomes blind to its own descent. This mistake is subtle. It wears the clothes of sincerity. It speaks in a tone that still sounds pure. But inside, something is rotting. The intention that was once as clear as water becomes cloudy. The mission becomes confused. The soul begins to crave results, attention, victory, anything that looks like proof that the calling was real. And when those results don't come quickly, the chosen one begins to panic. They might speak louder, act more radically, push more aggressively. But what they don't realize is that the panic itself is the proof that they're no longer grounded in divine trust. They're now addicted to human approval. And here's where it gets even more dangerous. When a chosen one refuses to slow down and reflect, they start thinking that any opposition must be ignorance or jealousy. They no longer consider that correction might be a form of protection. They surround themselves with voices that only agree, only cheer, only elevate. And when the whisper of warning finally comes, they ignore it. Because now, their image has become their identity. Their mission has become their brand. And their downfall has already begun. Quietly, invisibly, but surely. This is the mistake that doesn't just damage the individual. It damages every soul who believes in them. Every person who watched them rise now watches them twist. And what makes it worse is that the chosen one still thinks they're doing good. They still speak with confidence. They still use the same language. But the light is gone. And when the light leaves, what's left is just noise and shadows. If this mistake isn't caught early, it becomes a pattern, a model that others copy. And before long, you have not one, but many who follow the same path, believing they're serving truth, but slowly feeding their ego. And once that happens, the mistake multiplies. It spreads. It becomes a culture. And the original spark that was meant to guide people back to the Creator now becomes the very fire that burns the bridge. All because one person thought their mission made them untouchable. This is not a theory. It's a reality. A spiritual reality that has repeated itself for generations. And unless it's stopped, unless we pause and ask ourselves where we're headed, the same mistake will destroy the chosen ones for decades to come. There comes a point when the chosen one doesn't even realize they're slipping. It's not because they're blind, but because they've replaced their spiritual compass with emotions, ambition, and personal logic. They still pray. They still speak of purpose. But their soul has started to move out of alignment. And the signs are always there. Small at first. Easy to excuse. But unmistakable for those who are honest with themselves. One of the earliest signs is when correction starts to feel like an attack. Advice that once felt like protection now feels like an insult. They begin to see themselves as the exception, too experienced, too deep, too important to be guided by others. Another sign is the subtle growth of impatience. The chosen one begins to feel that the world is too slow, too distracted, too blind to see what they see. Instead of using that vision to serve, they use it to judge. They withdraw. They isolate. Not because they are guarding their heart, but because they're quietly feeding their pride. They tell themselves it's protection, but in truth, it's superiority. Their presence becomes heavy. Their silence becomes performance. They start speaking in tones of warning, not love. They no longer carry the light. They carry the pressure of being right. Then comes the obsession with impact. Everything becomes about the numbers, the reach, the response. If people agree, they feel victorious. If people disagree, they feel betrayed. The mission that once flowed from sincerity now flows from the need to prove something. To themselves, to others, maybe even to God. But faith was never about proof. It was about surrender. And now, that surrender is slowly being replaced by strategy, calculated words, controlled narratives. They're no longer vessels of truth. They're managers of an image. And perhaps the most terrifying sign of all is the loss of tears. The heart that once cried easily now remains dry. The voice that once trembled before speaking now speaks with certainty. The chest that once tightened from fear now swells with pride. And they don't even realize it. They've gotten used to the noise, to the praise, to the power. And slowly, without noticing, they become a reflection of everything they used to warn others about. That's the turning point. When the chosen one starts to feel too elevated to kneel, too confident to pause, too important to be quiet. They forget that the power of the message was never in their voice but in their submission. And when that's gone, the message becomes hollow. The presence becomes intimidating. The eyes lose softness. The heart grows heavy, and yet the world still applauds, still listens, still follows. And so the chosen one keeps going, blind to the fact that they've already taken the first steps toward their own downfall. The only way to escape this silent destruction is to return. Not physically, not publicly, but internally. To return to the place where everything started. That hidden space in the soul where the mission was born, where the heart trembled before it spoke, and where nothing mattered except being right with the Creator. This isn't about giving up the path. It's about purifying it. Because no matter how far someone has gone into pride, there's always a door back. But that door won't open with the same strength used to build a platform. It only opens with softness, with surrender. The first thing a chosen one must do is allow the image to fall. Whatever reputation has been built, whatever recognition has been received, it has to become irrelevant. Not erased, but unimportant. Because you cannot carry a sacred calling while also carrying the fear of losing your audience. That fear will make you choose silence when truth is needed, or noise when silence is more powerful. When your image becomes heavier than your mission, you've already lost your way. The only way back is to let go of what the world thinks you are and return to what you truly are, a servant. So now, dear soul, after all these words, after all this reflection, comes the moment of truth. You know what you carry. You know the pull in your chest. You know the dreams, the callings, the weight that others don't see. Maybe you've walked the path with sincerity. Maybe you've drifted. Maybe you've already fallen. But the beauty is, it's never too late to return. What destroys chosen ones is not the mistake. It's the refusal to acknowledge it. What ruins the mission is not the fall. It's the pride that refuses to kneel after it. And if you're still breathing, you still have a chance to rewrite your story. Let your return begin here, quietly, without a post, without a speech, without telling the world. Just you and your Lord. Let this be the moment you take off the pressure, the mask, the weight of being the one, and return to just being His. Let the crowd fade. Let the title go. Let the mission be His again. And now, as promised, let us end with a prayer. O Allah, cleanse our hearts from pride before it hardens. Remove from us the thirst for attention and fill us with a longing for you alone. Make us carry the message with sincerity, not for glory but for guidance. Keep us small in our own eyes, even if the world raises us. Protect us from becoming the reason someone else is misled. And if we are chosen, let us be chosen to serve, to kneel, to obey, and to love you more than anything else. And when we are tested, let us remember the beginning. Let us remember you, Amin.